You're listening to the All Business Answers podcast. I'm your host, Bradford Shimp. This episode is sponsored by Broad River Creative. If you want to start a blog for your small business, visit broadrivercreative.com. They provide design and coaching for small business blogs. I'm joined today by Jack Garson, author of a really great book called How to Build a Business and Sell It for Millions. Hi, Jack. How are you?
Great to be here. Thanks so much for having me, Brad.
Well, it's great to have you on the show. I really love this book. I think it's full of great information for small business owners. I just want to start out with the question I like to ask authors. Why did you write this book?
I was just crying out to help people because for 25 years I have sat in boardrooms and seen executives make decisions that led to great success or in other cases great failure. There are people that I've worked with where after years of working with them they got a check for $100 million. And there's other people who unfortunately ignored advice and were putting their business in bankruptcy. And in both cases I saw the do's and the don'ts that could help people achieve success and avoid failure, and I just felt compelled to write about it.
Well, tell me a little bit more about your background. What is it your experience? What do you do that puts you in touch with all these businesses, especially around selling a business?
Well, I'm an entrepreneur at heart and a lawyer by trade. I went to George Washington University Law School, but by the time I graduated, I'd already been around law firms and businesses for many, many years, and so in 1985, when I became a licensed attorney, I started working with businesses right away, rolling up my sleeves and helping them overcome their problems and achieve success. And it was in all areas. It was in real estate and business and employment and a variety of other areas. But ultimately, I became their trusted advisor, and I was led into the boardroom and saw how they really made decisions, and I was able to participate in helping them make better ones as time went by.
It's great, and I can see from your book that any business that employed you as a lawyer, you're really lucky because it wasn't just law advice, but business advice and entrepreneur advice, and all of that comes through in your book.
Absolutely. It really is a combination, and I think when you find the right advisor, it's a tremendous benefit for you because when I'm sitting in a meeting and somebody's talking about adding a new department or hiring a new executive, I draw upon decades of experience that I can lend to the situation, and that's a really wonderful benefit. So you don't have to make every mistake on your own as a business executive.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I think, especially with small businesses just starting out, one of the mistakes that they tend to make is not getting the advice, the consultants, the coaches, lawyers, accountants, and finding the right people to help steer the business forward.
Well, that's absolutely true. First, they don't know what they don't know, and they often don't have the money or feel they have the money to pay for intangible things like advice. They're much more focused on finding the money for rent or a new tractor as opposed to advisors, even though an advisor might save them a lot of money.
Right. Yeah, it's just, I don't know if it's the chicken before the egg or not, but it's, you don't want to spend the money because it costs money up front. But
that's
the downside
exactly
of that is if you did spend the money, you would end up making a lot more quickly, I believe.
That's exactly correct.
I want to talk to you about the book. It's really, I see it as two books in one. You could take the title and split it in two. It's, how to build a business and then how to sell a business for millions. First of all, just tell me, how do these two things interrelate?
Well, I think they interrelate because so many people want to be able to sell their business. And even for those who don't want to be able to sell their business, they should have that option. They should build their business so they can sell it. And they overlook so many things while they're building their business that would ultimately facilitate the sale of their business. It's a shame when I see somebody who's built a business over 10 or 20 years and has made certain mistakes that really cripple their ability to sell their business. So you can build a great business, and you never need to read the back half of the book, the last 20 chapters. You can focus on the first 20 chapters of the book and just say, I want to build the best business in the world. I'm not going to worry about that part of it. But if you want that ultimate payday on top of having a great business, then you integrate both strategies, building a great business and positioning it for sale and learning how the proper way is to sell a business.
Well, you really talk about in the book how positioning the business for sale, other than the technical stuff, than the actual, proposals and everything like that, but positioning it so that people will be interested in selling it is really about building a good, sound business, which is something you want to do whether or not you plan on selling.
First and foremost, build a good business. If you build a good business, you've got something you can sell, and you've also got something you wouldn't mind keeping. So you're exactly correct, Brad.
Right. So, I mean, definitely I agree with your advice. Read the first 20 chapters, whether you plan to sell ever or you plan to pass it down from generation to generation. If you want the business to outlast you, you got to focus, I think, from day one on building a strong business that other people would be attracted to.
Absolutely right.
And then you could be in the position to say, keep your hands off. This is my business if you want, or you can say, hey, give me millions of dollars, and it can be yours.
That's exactly correct. I have people who aren't necessarily interested in selling their business, but they built a great one, and then someone comes along and just makes them an offer they can't refuse. And they never thought they would have sold it, but with that really tempting offer, they say, okay, well, then I'll go ahead and do it.
What are your thoughts for somebody that's just starting their business? Maybe it's just them, maybe it's them and a partner. Selling is probably the farthest thing from their mind, but from day one, there's some things that you should be doing in order to build a solid business. What are some of those things?
Well, that's a great question. Most people who go into business they leap before they look. The greatest advice that I could give you is involve yourself in more planning. I don't mean so much planning that you smother the idea, but there are people that come to me when I say to them, if you do everything according to your plan, if everything works the way you want it to work, will you be profitable? And they don't know. They have not gone through the math. They have not created a revenue budget and an expense budget and really seen if they'll be profitable. So first and foremost, you need to do some planning. And that planning is discussed in detail in the book, including some nice formulas on calculating what your anticipated revenues are, what your anticipated expenses are, until you're consistently profitable. The shortfall, the difference between the revenues and expenses, is the amount of money you need to start with or to have very soon after you start in order to make it through to consistent profitability. So that's the first and foremost thing that you need when you're starting a business. And all of that should be wrapped up into a business plan where you commit your ideas to writing because they force you to be more precise. And then you take that business plans to various people, including people that aren't necessarily your best buddies, people that are going to be harsh critics, because it's much better to hear tough advice up front than it is to hear people who will just give you an attaboy or an attagirl and send you on your way. So first and foremost, that's what I would do if I were starting a business.
That's great advice. I mean, I think everyone knows that you put a plan in place, you may not follow. It may not be the way it works out. But on the other hand, if you can't be profitable on paper, then there's no way you're going to be profitable in the real world.
That's exactly correct. That document's got to be a living, breathing document. You won't follow it to the T, but if you're not even profitable on paper, as you just said, it's very unlikely you'll be profitable in real life.
That's great advice. A favorite topic of mine to discuss is business scaling. What are some of your tips? You have a chapter on that scalability in the book. What are some tips for positioning yourself for growth and being able to handle growth quickly?
Great question. When a lot of people ask me, well, what does scalability mean and why is it important? Scalability is your ability to grow your business. It's the ability to make it bigger. If you buy a phone system that can only handle 10 phones, that's not a scalable phone system. If you have a phone system that will let you add modules and keep making it bigger and bigger and bigger, that's a scalable phone system. When your goal is to grow a good medium-sized business business that you can sell for millions of dollars or keep and make millions of dollars, you've got to have scalability. Now, scalability is especially important to purchasers of businesses, because if a purchaser is going to buy your business for $10 million, they want to know they can make it worth $20 million. Otherwise, they just invest the money in bonds and keep it safe.
Right.
So they have to know that they can make that business bigger. If they happen upon your business and your business says to them, this can be made bigger, whatever's critical to your business, you have the ability to get more of and grow bigger, then they feel comfortable you pass that scalability test. If you're too locked in because you've got a very, very small or a non-existent executive team, and even if you got more business you couldn't handle it, they're going to be very concerned about their ability to scale up or grow your business once they buy it.
Great. So it sounds like the key word when you're thinking about scalability is limits, and trying to put in systems in place and a team in place that takes as many of the limits off for growth, so that you have the opportunity to grow. Because if you have limits in place, you can only grow to a certain amount, and then maybe things start to fall apart.
Yeah, absolutely. I like to think of it as you're building your business, you always want to be building bridges to growth and not barriers to growth. So it even comes down into your hiring decisions. Certain people, they have a certain set of knowledge, and they're never going to grow beyond that set of knowledge. And certain people are highly educable. They want to grow. They want to advance. That employee will facilitate scalability versus the person who's locked into the knowledge they have the day you hire them.
Great. Well, let's talk about people. That's one of the things you mentioned in the book is building a good executive team. And so how do you go about finding the right people and building a team that's going to take your business beyond just you?
It's a great question. It's one of the most critical things that you can do, because most people, when they're setting up a company, are extremely reluctant to delegate. So my advice when you hire your first executives are get the best that you can afford, because it will reinforce you in your idea of delegating. If you're the typical founder that's used to doing everything themselves and you're a perfectionist, you're very reluctant to delegate. If you hire someone who's not really great, the first executive you hire, you're going to have a very difficult time delegating to them. And in fact, it's going to prove to you it's a mistake to hire executives. So get really good people. Second piece of advice is get people who will free up your time. One of the first things you want to do is get somebody who can take a lot of the weight off of you so that you can assume a greater and more visionary role with the company, and so that you can fill important roles like being the recruiter for other executives in the company.
Great. So, that just popped a summary into my head is a bad idea to hire somebody that adds extra work to your job. It's a good idea to hire somebody that takes work away.
Exactly. Except for, a normal amount of training and familiarization. Right. You want somebody that you can really delegate vital tasks to, and if you don't get them, you're doomed to stay a small company.
Right. If you're doomed to micromanage, you can't grow beyond a certain size. Let's get into talking about the sale of a business a little bit. First of all, you can't just throw a sign up on your business saying for sale and expect it to happen. What are some steps that a business owner should take, and when should they start taking them when they're thinking about selling their business? Great
question. Selling is something that most entrepreneurs do 1, 2, 3 times in their entire career, whereas the rest of their business they're doing all the time. They've gotten very good. So the biggest mistakes, and that's why I get into a lot of nuts and bolts in the second 20 chapters of the book, the biggest mistakes that entrepreneurs make is when they go to sell, because they're completely new at this process. First, you want to clean house in the sense of make sure that you've got your business in good shape. Make sure you've got the right financial statements, because the people who are looking at your business are going to want to see them. Make sure that you've solved the problems that you need to solve. If you've got any regulatory or compliance issues, make sure that you've put those to bed, because I've seen those kill deals as well. It's sort of like spring cleaning for your business. Make sure that happens. Then start interviewing the appropriate advisors that will help you with the sale. One of the most important advisors you'll have is an investment banker. But in addition, you're going to need legal and financial advice, and often your everyday lawyer and your everyday accountant may not necessarily be skilled in selling businesses. They may be fantastic business attorneys and accountants that have helped you with many things, but they might not be really excellent at selling your business. So assembling the team is the next big step. And once the team is assembled, they're going to start gathering the information that they're going to present to prospective purchasers, and that information is going to go, and I explain this in the book, into the book, which describes your company, and then they'll also coach you on presentations to prospective purchasers, and those are called the dog and pony shows. All of this I go into great detail in the book,
Right.
and it's a very elaborate process that goes all the way through trying to conduct an auction where people are competing to buy your business.
Right. You talk about getting a team together. One of the things you talk about in the book is, how to sell a business, but how it's important to keep running it at the same time. So, who do you pull in internally out of your business, and how do you keep your business going while you're working through a selling process, which could take some time?
I'm so glad you asked this, because there's two fatal mistakes that business owners make when they go to sell, and you've just hit on one of them. They take their eye off the ball. They tell everyone in their company the most important thing in the world is selling the company. They pick the most important people in the company to be on the deal team, like the chief operating officer, the chief financial officer, the chief marketing and sales officer. All these folks start working on helping the outside advisors, preparing the book on the company, and then doing the dog and pony presentations. Mm-hmm. All wrong. I'm a contrarian when it comes to this. I'm saying don't involve those people. Keep them on their job. The people that should be involved in this sales process are those folks' assistants or number two people. And if you've got a marketing department in your company, the people in the marketing department that are very good communicators should be involved. But it should not be your first tier of executives in the company that are so involved, because when they are involved, operations start to suffer, sales start to suffer, your numbers suffer, and then the purchaser will try to renegotiate the deal because you fall off a cliff with your sales.
Talk about, because a lot of that has to do with how much time goes into a sale. How long does it take to sell a business?
I would say from the time you first meet with your outside advisors, a good estimate is 6 to 12 months. Depending on the size and complexity of the business, it could easily go to 18 months. But it's very important to manage the process, because if you manage the process, it will not only happen a bit quicker, but it will also be a process that produces a better sales price for the business.
Tell me about some things that, once you're in the sales process, that could possibly derail it.
Well, one I already mentioned is you take your eye off the ball. Mm-hmm. Okay? That often will produce bad sales, and it will derail the process. The second big one is when you make too optimistic forecasts of your sales and profits. A lot of people, when they're asked for their sales projections in what's called a pro forma, or an estimate of future sales revenues, profits, they're a little bit too optimistic because they think they'll never be around when those numbers are being produced. The thing you have to understand is, most purchasers are professional purchasers, and most sellers are professional business people, but they're not professional sellers. Mm-hmm. So the professional purchasers have thought all this through many times. And what they'll do is they'll drag the deal out until the time finally rolls around that you see whether or not those projections come to be. And if you overestimated on your projections, you're going to end up in big trouble with the purchaser, and they're going to want to either walk away from the deal or, more likely, renegotiate a drastically lower purchase price. So that's one of the things I caution people. It's much better to slightly underestimate future sales and be a hero than to slightly overestimate or exaggerate your sales and lose credibility and bargaining power.
That's great advice, and your book is just full of. I mean, every chapter I got something good out of, and I highly recommend this. No matter if you're not ready to sell a business now, read the first 20 chapters, put it on the shelf for the other 20 chapters. If you are in a place where you're thinking about selling the business within the next maybe 5 years, you need to dig into the whole book. Um, Tell me, where's your book available? What's the title again, and how can people get it?
The book is How to Build a Business and Sell It for Millions. You can get it on all the internet booksellers like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Borders, etc. And also, Barnes & Noble has put a lot of the books in their stores, their brick-and-mortar stores as well.
Great. And I also am going to post it on my recommended reading store for those of you that visit allbizanswers.com. Jack, thanks so much for coming on and talking to me. Great advice, and like I said, I suggest everybody read this book because it's just full of the same type of advice.